Thank you. Thank you so much. It's great to be here third time. People say, third time is bliss or few other things. Thank you so much, Dr. Gumasta. He has been such a great inspiration for all of us. Not only that he works in the field, which is most important, but he writes in the field, and he organizes, and he takes all the trouble to get us here. So I really want to give 3 cheers to him for doing this all the time. He's so busy that he really did not put this topic on your list, because he said that he didn't even understand what I was trying to say. I did send him the topic. So he said he had no idea what I was trying to say. So I hope I can make sense about it today. So, Ram Raj Baithe Trailoka Harsid Bhai Gaye Sab Soka. The important thing is, the Ram Raj was not only in Ayodhya. It was for all 3 lokas. So we have to take not just this world view, but all the world's view of whatever. And then, of course, everybody else knows, Bairun Kahus and Koi, Ram Pratap Bisamta Koi. If the communists are looking for an Indian ideology, all the Bisamta means no differences in people. The people were treated same, just like what communists try to say. And then he says, Varnasram nij dharam nirat ved path log, chalahi sada pavahi sukhahi nahi bhai sok na rog. There is no, perfect health, that nobody was sad, nobody was depressed. Some of my doctor's friends might not be very happy about it. But दैहिक दैविक भौतिक तापा राम राज का नहीं काहू ही व्यापा सब नर करें परस्पर प्रीति चलें स्वधर्म निरत श्रुत नीति. This is, people say there is quite a bit of discussion Valmiki Ramayana versus Tulsi Ramayana. Tulsi Ramayana is the extract. He started writing this when he was 75-year-old. So he had seen the world very different. He wasn't the commentator. He was not giving commentary like Valmiki was, because he was seeing the things. Tulsidas had opportunity to think about it, integrate. So you can just see the Swadharma, Shruti, Niti, all these things are in part there. Nahi daridra ko dukhi na deena, nahi ko abudh na lakshan hina. So anyway, you all know this. I'm just presenting it just to make sure that this is not only this world. When I said this, where the world is parts, which was predisposed for Ram Raj, it could be all 3 lokas. So this world is kind of simple. I want to start with Jabali, because Jabalpur, we are in Jabalpur, and I understand I missed yesterday. Swamini Amrita mentioned about Jabalpur quite a bit. But Jabali in Ramayana was actually at odds with Ram. So Jabalpur is a good place to be at odds with people, because, it is in his name. He was considered atheist. Atheist means, somebody who didn't believe exactly in Vedas or some of our sages or gods, Brahm. But he was a very practical person. I could be one of those people. So I like it. I think this is great to have a discussion. Most important thing is, in Ayodhya, it was allowed for people to have differences like that. And that's very important. So then there are other things. Jabali, there are so many Jabalis, and obviously he must have been great enough for people to name Jabali their kids. In Skand Puran, even in Rishi Ratadhwaj, he was a son of Rishi. And then he apparently was during Krishna time also. And finally, in Chandogya Upanishad, there is so much written about Satyakam Jabali. So I think Jabalpur is a good place to have this kind of meetings, and I'm very, very happy. So I tried to go around Jabalpur to see what the situation is, because Ram Raj is something that, you really do it. So I went out yesterday looking for what is in Jabalpur. I saw a pakauda dukan and surrounded by pathology center. That doesn't sound like Ram Raj Baithe Trailoka, right? So it is important Dr. Gumasta is a doctor. He does treatments to everybody. And this, I think we need to find a way to bring this situation, this deep thinking of Ramayana, which has at every level you can understand, from physical to subtle level to causal level, something that Jabali actually was talking about quite a bit. So we need to get some lessons. I was wondering yesterday very aloud whether during Ram time there was a conference hall. There wasn't. So it's okay to have a conference hall, but we should always remember where we need to go. And which is, Ram did everything in his life just doing it. He hardly ever gave a lecture. So I'm sorry that I'm giving lecture about Ram when he really never gave a lecture about anything. But I hope that we learn the lesson. If I make a mistake, then you just don't make that mistake. Now I want to talk about India. Why only India claims God to be born. Nobody else in the whole world ever claimed that God was ever born. And I'm from Uttar Pradesh. I'm actually from a village near Ayodhya. And all the gods are born only in Uttar Pradesh. Ram, Krishna, Shiv. Why does happen? Many people ask me that in America. I said, God, rest of India is good enough for God to send somebody, some Sankaracharya, some messenger, some guru, some yogi. But Uttar Pradesh is so bad that he has to go himself. So Uttar Pradesh is not easy to handle. Yeah, Santanuji is a big fan of Uttar Pradesh, so I think he's clapping. So anyway, there is a Prakriti, and there is a Swadeshi, there is a Anveshan or search. You search for things. And then there is a research, which is something like we do. And then there is a Vyavasthikaran, means you need to organize, and that's what is called scientific. I happen to be a scientist. And then you have to express Abhivakti. And then you translate. And Jeffrey Armstrong, Kavindra Rishi, will be talking more about translation this afternoon. It's very important aspect to translate. And that's called scientific culture. That is what India's actually constitution, only India's constitution says, Article 51A, that it's a duty of citizens to develop scientific temper. So you can question anything and everything. There is no problem. And that Jawali thing fits in there. Now, India is a very, very, very unique country. The only country in the world that does not get affected by ice age, because Himalayas are there. Himalayas there, so the ice age does not affect. Europeans are different because they are affected by the ice age, with the cold weather. Indians are not, because the South Pole also has cold weather, but the ocean absorbs that. North Pole has cold weather, Himalaya stops it. It's just almost like made by the creator. For this is a very unique place. And this unique place started 71 million years ago. It was actually, India used to be part of Africa, and then moved 10 million years ago to Asia, and then it slammed in Asia, and the Himalaya is still growing, about a centimeter every year. It's still growing. So this is, people say being born in a Hindu is a very important, and Kavindra Rishi might explain it a little bit differently. But Hindu comes from Sindhu, which is really talks about the geography. And the geography here is so benevolent to people that the culture has been there for a very long time. And so rest of the world can also take lesson out of it. And that part is, according to population genetics, humanity started in Africa. It's nothing to do with this one, because humanity is only 200,000 years. But for some odd reason, they went to India, that to South India. And South India, they're 65,000 years ago. And if you see everybody else, including Arabs, North Africans, Europeans, you can see these numbers are those many thousand years, even Chinese. So it looks like a good 10 to 15,000 years humanity stayed in South India. This is just a fact that I didn't create it. It's just current scientific research. So that shows that everybody has an opportunity to live in India. Now what that has led to, there was a discussion yesterday, I think, Trivedi ji was talking, Sudhanshu Trivedi was talking about, Ayodhya's princes went to Korea, and the whole all Koreans are very obligated. And he did talk a little bit about Italy. He talked about Ravenna, I think the city of Ravenna and the Ramanas. Well, I want to present something very interesting to support my hypothesis. There is a Makar Sankranti coming up very soon. And that always happens at 14th or 15th of January. Now, interesting thing is, all over India, it is celebrated in different names they give. In our area, they call it khichdi. They make khichdi. It's interesting, most of the celebrations in India are after the harvest of something. The rice, I come from a farming family, rice is harvested sometimes in November, not in January. But I have a friend, Partha Sarthi, from Tamil Nadu. He said that in Tamil Nadu, actually, there is a harvest of rice in January. So this Pongal thing comes from South India. And we have, in North India, an interesting thing is, there is a dish called risotto, which is a Milanese. My daughter now teaches in Bocconi University in Milan. I recently visited her. So I went there to have risotto. This is just like khichdi. They eat khichdi, call it risotto. It's very interesting. Now the point is, what is common between Italy and India? Well, I have a good friend who is a neurobiologist actually. We did some work together in Madison, Wisconsin, and he told me 30 years ago that some Italian think that they came from India. 30 years ago, his name is Giampietro Schiavo. He said some Italian thought that they think that they came from India. Now, interesting thing is, I was walking around with my daughter and son-in-law. I found a Mandodari bookstore in Milan. So there is so many other common things. There are some words and other things. But what I'm trying to say, this culture has spread throughout the world, the Ramayana culture. Why Ramayana culture? I'll come to that. I want to talk about the human, the word human that has a man in it. It has so many aspects of these things. And why is that culture important to learn is that man, human word comes from man, Manu. Manu and Satrupa, where the king and queen in Ayodhya. And those Manu and Satrupa are the origin, according to Indian cosmology, चाहे पौराणिक कथाएं ले लें या कि सृष्टि की उत्पत्ति के रूप में देखें, तो मनु शत्रुपा जो हैं हमारे सारे लोगों के पूर्वज हैं, और वो उनका राज कहाँ था? अयोध्या में था। इंटरेस्टिंग बात यह है कि ये उसी का मैप है, ये नेशनल जियोग्राफिक में जो हमने आपको पहले मैप दिखाया उसी का दूसरा रूप है। उसमें इंटरेस्टिंग ये है कि मत्स्य पुराण में ये कहा गया है कि वहाँ पे जो बहुत बड़ी बाढ़ आई थी, उस बाढ़ में एक द्रविड़ियन राजा को मत्स्य पुराण में भगवान विष्णु एक मछली के अवतार में उनको he brought them from South India to North, and that king was Manu, and he is the one who established his kingdom at the river, at the bank of river Saryu, and that's Manu and Satrupa. So this whole entire humanity comes from there, and that's why even Italians think that they came from India. What are the elements of Ramraj? Well, if you want to really talk about Ramraj, keep your word. Prana jaye par vachan na jaye. And then you have Ram in various conditions where he keeps his words, and he does what is known as welfare of others. Parahit saris dharma nahi bhai. These are examples. I don't have time to go through this, whether it's meeting Sugriv or Sabari or so many instances that you have been knowing. Parahit saris, he always considered others' welfare as a supreme. And he had spent all his life for that. So if you have to act according to self-reliant, independence view of free praja. Praja is very important. It has to be self-reliant if you want to create a system. First you behave yourself, and then you create a system for people to do like that. And so you see, that's why praja, the Dhobi, the washerman context that comes in during Ram Raj, where Ram had to listen to praja. He was totally dedicated to praja. Now, the world has world orders, all over the world orders. Samuel Huntington of Harvard University had his own theory of world orders based on religion. I did some research, and I don't have time to really explain this data, but I have done some research where India is always, the boys are preferred here, and the girls are not taken care, all that. I did this research in 2002, and I found the at birth natural rate of boy versus girl in India is one of the perfect places. Number two, more important, that natural ratio from birth to death, India along with some of these Middle Eastern countries, Iraq, Iran, and some of the, this is India green, this is green, this is green, rest of them are deviated. So basically you maintain the natural ratio of people, which means that you take care of people as they are. So when we talk about civilization, that's called civilization. The Manu and Satrupa, like I said, during Matsya Avatar, he was moved, he was a Dravidian king. It's very important to know, because as a North Indian, I always had this misunderstanding that, everything happened in North, and Dravidians, the Tamilians, they just speak Tamil language because they're so fanatic about it. But that's not true. The important thing is, like I said, the food comes from the pongal and khichdi and risotto comes from there, and they come from there. And then what you see, and now next one is the language. Tulsi Ramayana is written in Awadhi. It's not because he couldn't write Sanskrit. It's not because he couldn't explain in Radheshyam Ramayana was beautifully presented yesterday. But abhi aapko dekhenge, if you have Hindi movies, and Mali and Dudhwala and Rasoiya, all of them speak Awadhi. Why? Because that's true. They go in Bombay and that's all they do. So to get an impact, communication, this is a communication style. Tulsidas was the best director. He wrote everything in Awadhi because that's stories of Awadh. It has to be written in Awadhi. But then if everybody sees that, that's perfect. Because, if I'm Ayodhya, I'm from Ayodhya, and there is, when I go to different countries, including Taiwan, Thailand, the moment you say that you are from Ayodhya, they immediately pay respect to you. Just because I'm from there, I don't have any qualities of that. But the same is true for Awadhi language. The interesting thing is, I believe, and some of these Sanskrit scholars, including Kavindraji, might disagree with me, I believe that Ayodhya is the origin of everything. Awadhi language has to be the origin of every other language. If Manu Satrupa were there, then it has to be from there. But also we have to think, the Sanskrit is the most organized, most scientific language that has been put together to absorb all of it. And that's what Europeans call as Indo-European language or English today. But if Awadhi is the language of Manu Satrupa, and Manu Satrupa came from Tamil Nadu, then there should be some connection between Tamil and Awadhi also. And I tried to find some, like Amma is very common, Appa is Bappa in Awadhi, and interestingly, Pillai means chota bacha. It's like little baby. In Awadhi also they call Pillu. So there are some common words that comes from Tamil to Awadhi. But more importantly, you can read this. I have tried to come up with Awadhi words connection to English, but not to Sanskrit. And in that one, I have the first one is Nani, is Naini word in English, but in Sanskrit it's called Matamahi. I'm just going to give you a couple examples. You have Neek. There is a word Neek in Awadhi, and that is nice. But in Sanskrit, it's Subham, I think. Yeah, Subham. And then there are many other ones. One of them is not written here. I think, yeah, it was written here. Farch. There is the word farch in Awadhi, which means nobody has touched it yet. And that's in English word is fresh. Whereas in Sanskrit, it will be something like new or sudh. So there are, it seems like the people probably moved, like I said, 65,000 years ago. From Avodhi was, Manu Satrupa's culture was important, and Ramayan's culture is still going to be important for that. So I have a suggestion. Suggestion is that, you need to think of the Vesti, like India is a Vesti, or an individuals could be Vesti, and then you have a society, and then you have environment around you, which all affects, society affects, and everybody affects each other, and then there is Samasti. When we talk about Triloka, that's what the Triloka is, and it's in thermodynamic sense, it is called as system and surrounding. Wouldn't go into detail of it, but this is equivalent to Yat Pinde Tat Brahmande. Yat Pinde Tat Brahmande is also the same thing as system and surrounding in second law of thermodynamics. And the way we say we are Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, so then the whole concept of nationalism does not fit. Because if you are Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, then you cannot be nationalist. You have to be internationalist. So I suggest that India must change its instance to internationalism through duty and service to humanity. And I do some research in Ayurveda, and Ayurveda is a very, very deep science, and that can explain the connection between the birth of this universe and the end of this universe. So if we use that as a means, I think we will be able to convince people and get there. Final couple of points. As you know, the Raghuvans, this is Kalidas has written Raghuvansam. We used to have a concept of Chakravarti Raja. Chakravarti Raja never went to take over somebody's land. Only they established Nyaya. It has to be justice. So if there is injustice, they are willing to die for it. But the whole world, like what might be doing United Nations supposed to do today. But we had Chakravarti Raja, and in several were in the Vikshwaku ones. And so that, what were their things? Parahit saris dharma nahi bhai, par pida sam nahi athmai. They would not tolerate injustice against anybody, anywhere. And that not only limited to human beings, by the way. And then they kept their word, Raghukul Reet Sada Chali Ai Prana Jai Par Bachan Na Jai. With this, it's very interesting thing, it's just a lighter moment. In America, there is a dollar bill, it says, in God we trust. In India, it says, मैं धारक को 100 रुपए देने का वचन देता हूँ. In God we trust, अगर if you want to translate in Hindi, वो उसको कहते हैं भगवान भरोसे. और जो whole system that is running about GDP, stock market is भगवान भरोसे. So we need to get back to ours, and the system that is created for doing that is Prajatantra, I briefly mentioned, which does not go around and govern the rest of the world, which only taking over controlling does not take over controlling anything, not for keeping for the next generation, none of that, It's just you establish justice and that give people independence. I have written a book, in case you get interested, a different take. Some of my ideas are in there. The title of the book is in an NRI view of India in the tradition of Ram, Krishna and Gandhi. And you don't really need to read the book if you understand the title. It's the tradition of Ram, Krishna and Gandhi. And they were also NRIs, by the way, because Ram went to Lanka and the cultures minister is not here. But he was an NRI at that time because he was in Sri Lanka, and that's where he said, Janani Janma Bhumisya Swargadapi Gariyasi. Krishna also did the same thing. He left Mathura and then he went to Dwarika to protect. And some of us have gone outside, but that doesn't mean that we are not taking care of India. I think we hope that we will be able to bring India further down to people through our own actions. They see our own actions and they believe in it. So final word I wanted to say this, what is this praja? The Vedic society had this Brahman Vyavastha, I talked about that, in which they now somehow they think the Sudras are not as great. Actually, Sudras are the best people. If I have time, I will try to convince you for that. But unfortunately, I don't have time. One of the problem is, in Bhagavad Gita says, Chaturvarnyam Maya Srishtam Gun Karma Vibhagasa. And then there is a chapter 18th, Slok 44, it says, Paricharyatmakam karma sudrasi api swabhavajam. Many times you look at this, they say, Sudra ka kaam hai, sabki seva karna. इसमें ये लिखा हुआ है शूद्र से अपि, शूद्र का भी स्वभाव है। इसका मतलब ब्राह्मण का भी होना चाहिए, क्षत्रिय का भी होना चाहिए, बस सेवा करना सबका होना चाहिए, स्वभाव होना चाहिए। अगर सेवा नहीं कर सकता है तो वो कुछ नहीं है, ना वो ब्राह्मण है ना क्षत्रिय, वो सवर्ण हो नहीं सकता। तो दिस इज, देयर इज a misunderstanding we have created in both in understanding intellectually, scholarly and also in practicing. If we change that, we will find a way that India will be seen as a chamatkari, you know, the place where all the Vishwaguru concept and other things will come. And this, my final slide is that Sudras, just to convince that Sudras are known as Praja. Prajapati is Brahma. Sudras known as engineers, doctors, professors like us who provide service. I and Kavindra Rishi had some conversation very early on, 15 years ago, about this. This Sudras are the one who can be gods. They can be the Prajapati, they can be Vishwakarma. You do not have other people to get there. So being Sudra is they are creative people. They are the one who really create this world. And so if we want to bring Ram Raj throughout the world, it will be through this self-reliant work, creative work, which is what was in the Ram Raj. And I find the spots, unfortunately, I just showed you that doesn't look like Jabalpur is the right place to get Ram Raj. You just saw pakoda and other things in there. What you will see, I find in India also, people say a lot of things, but they don't do it. Most of the time, bureaucracy, anybody you just look at, most of the time they will say something and do something else. What I find in the Western world, particularly in America, at least whatever the rules are written, they are for everybody and they will be doing it. So if they learn more, you will find that you will be importing Ram Raj from America someday. And there is a time for us to improve ourselves, practice, and become and learn something from Dr. Gumasta, who is doing all this. And thank you all very much.